Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you're listening to Job Search Radio. You know, for some of you, you're at the point where there's no longer the need to think about being out for the summer. You're done with school. You've graduated. Congratulations. You've toughed it out. You've gone through the hard stuff. Well, at least the hard stuff up until this point. And for some of you, you're going to be approaching the world of work, your career, finding your first full-time job. Beth Kuhel and I are going to talk about a number of things that are designed to help you find your next position. We go through a wide-ranging group of subjects, and she is terrific. So I hope you enjoy this interview, and if you do, I hope you give it 5 stars in iTunes. It helps other people discover the show. So again, hang in there, enjoy the ride, and let's sing along.
Are you looking for a new job or interested in leveling up? Job Search Radio is your go-to resource for insider tips on job hunting and growing your career. Here's your host, Jeff Altman.
So my guest this time is Beth Kuhel. Beth is an executive and millennial career coach and certified employment interview professional. She writes for Forbes, Business Insider, Entrepreneur Magazine, and the Personal Branding blog. Her work involves offering millennials career strategies to get hired and get ahead, and executives, she helps with leadership strategies to attract, engage, and retain top talent. Beth, welcome to Job Search Radio. Great to have you on this week.
Oh, Jeff, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. I'm excited to address this audience.
Thank you. And I'll simply say that we're going to be doing this show to help millennials find work. Now, before we start, I just want to say that people have this goofy notion that millennials are one monolithic group, as though someone 20 is similar to someone 30, which we both know isn't the case. So this show is going to be geared toward a younger millennial in finding work, and hint, hint, perhaps their parents as well. We're going to get involved with this. So I'll just simply say that in my experience, and I'll speak of myself, when I graduated college, I really hadn't found out what my passion was, and I suspect that's going to be true for a lot of upcoming grads or recent grads, depending upon when you're listening to the show, that they're going to be struggling with figuring out the thing that really gets them excited professionally. Is that what you see as well?
Actually, that's a great point and a great question, I think, to start off with, Jeff. Finding your passion is, I think it's almost become an obsession in America today, and it really provokes loads of anxiety for those of us who don't have a passion. Dr. Meg Jay, she writes in her book, Defining Decade, Why Your 20s Matter, and How to Make the Most of Them Now. She talks about that it's a time of life that's really known universally, I would say, for uncertainty. I mean, of course, there's uncertainty at all stages of our life, but when a millennial or someone in their 20s embraces that, knowing they're not alone, there's uncertainty, then we can move forward and see how we can reduce some of your anxiety. So what I suggest to those of you who are really earnest about finding your passion is to actually stop trying to find it and try doing this instead. I have, a few strategies that I think have been effective with my clients that I'd like to share with you today, and they're pretty straightforward, but not so obvious to most of the millennials. Is it okay if I go forward with those, Jeff?
Absolutely.
Okay. So these are 3 strategies that I was thinking about today just for your audience that could really help you all increase your satisfaction and hopefully your motivation at work. So if you don't know what your passion is, first of all, again, just know that you're in good company. Many famous people that you know in many different industries found their passion by accident, actually, and going into experiences and just gaining more skills. The first one, I would say, is to find your flow. There's a lot that's written about working in your flow, but that's when you're doing something that you love so much, you actually lose track of time.
I like drinking beer.
Okay. Actually, I had someone that came pretty close to saying that. So that's a really good one, Jeff, because believe it or not, I had someone who once said that they were in their flow when they were passively watching professional sports. And it's actually something that I'd like to address because it's not so far from getting to a deeper point. If it's something that doesn't apply to the workforce, for example, like drinking beer, or I'll use my example, which is watching professional sports, you could break it down into what turns you on with that activity. Now, if you see what is it that you really admire about people in professional sports, just to use this example, and see what behaviors that they're exhibiting that you admire. So if it's persistence, if it's bouncing back after a fall, if it's taking on a huge challenge and really striving for excellence, that's something that you could apply really to many different areas. We can use those terms to talk about work in real estate, theater, education, finance, and really any field. So it's breaking it down to really what the behaviors, the transferable skills are, and character traits, believe it or not.
So if I can interrupt for a second. So in my goofy example of the beer drinker, perhaps what they enjoy is being in a fun environment where people are having a good time, and perhaps hospitality is something that might be of interest to them.
I love it. That's spot on. It's again talking about what it is that motivates you, and then we have to go to the next place, is really thinking about finding the right fit. So this is the second suggestion that I have for your audience, which is when you're trying to find the right fit, you're coming closer to finding your passion. So what do I mean by that? I have to do a little bit of digging, a little bit of what I call sleuth work with my clients, and that's looking for people you admire that are doing things that align with your values and interests that you think are cool. Something that you say, hey, I think I could do that one day, but I don't know how they got there. So then what do? You can find a lot about people today, and many of us are on LinkedIn. That's one great place to go where you can actually, look at people in different industries that you read about or people that you know or heard of, maybe someone you even admire in your own circle, but it's a little bit, farther out from someone you just can call up and ask for information, and you can go into their LinkedIn profile and, getting you can do it anonymously, get your settings anonymous, and you get a premium account. I recommend that. But once you go on LinkedIn, you can see their career path. You can see what they excel at, where they worked before, and what did they do there, and what was their expertise, what's the expertise that's valued, where they're working. And you can get an idea of what areas you're similar to them, where the gaps are. So you can learn a lot by just going in and finding people who you think are doing something that's intriguing to you, and then learn about them.
Man, LinkedIn, that's like my parents' social network. It's awful. It's slow. It's clumsy. Like the pages are awful. And people think that.
Well, I think that when you start to look at LinkedIn, they have over 400 million users. And there is so much information and data that they have that you're really, you could do that in the privacy of your own home, and you can just look in your kitchen table and start to learn about people, learn about careers, learn about companies, and there's so much free information. Then what I suggest to my clients and to all of you is take a stab at looking at some of the groups they belong to. Join those groups. Join your alumni association. Those are people that are warm contacts. And start to track them. What are they talking about? What are the hot topics? And eventually, if you have content or information that you want to share, that's how you develop expertise. But just looking and see what they're talking about will give you a better insight into, is this a place, is this an organization or an area that is appropriate for me, and that could be something I want to explore more. And then the third thing, I think is, if you found your flow and you've found the right fit, that works for you, great. If not, here's another strategy. Find a problem that bothers you, either in your organization or just somewhere in the world. There's something that you think needs fixing, and try to become a part of the solution to that problem. When you become a problem solver and you're trying to help fix things, this really boosts what we call your brand. You get for making a difference, for making a contribution. And ultimately, this can become what we also call a transferable skill. Transferable skills are what you take from one workplace to the next, and it's what your hiring managers are looking for in addition to character traits. So when you know what to focus on, my hope and goal with your audience is to help reduce anxiety. So we can talk more about transferable skills another time. I think it'd be worth mentioning some of those character traits. But Adam Grant, who you might have heard of, he just wrote this fantastic book that just came out called Originals. The young tenured professor at Wharton, and he calls something boujade, the opposite of deja vu. Start looking at something familiar in a new way, is what Grant says, and this is where creative ideas come up. So you might want to get the book Originals. I just think it's a really fun read, but it also will give you ideas of how to think more creatively and come up with original ideas yourself. Well, ultimately, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Please finish what you were saying, and then we're going to go to a brief break.
Sure thing. Okay. Well, if you're looking for your passion, my idea here is to try to stay flexible, stay open and curious to learning. And the idea here is that most people find their calling by trying different things, developing different skills that are needed somewhere, become a valuable asset to a firm, and help to solve problems to improve a company or a firm or an organization. And when you get appreciated for your work, sometimes your passion will follow you.
Amen. And folks, we'll be back with more from Beth in just a moment. But first, I just want to tell you that 7 months of work have been completed. And on May 17th, Tuesday, the doors to JobSearchCoachingHQ.com are opening. This site is so unique. I only know of one other like it, and it's nowhere near as good. JobSearchCoachingHQ.com carries an enormous amount of information about job search that I've created and I've curated from other people. It will help you find work more quickly by just bringing you in touch with lots of great information. And it will help you by having a community of people there who can help answer your questions about different elements of job search. And access to me and the ability to ask me questions so that this way you don't make costly mistakes and learn through trial and error. After all, if you're a job hunter and you're learning through trial and error, you're probably missing out on things that you've really wanted. So come over to the site. I've got a low introductory rate for it. The price will go up in a few months, but I want to make sure that people explore the site, enjoy the site, and I think you really will. So again, JobSearchCoachingHQ.com opens May 17th, 2016. Come in, register, join the site, and I hope you really like it. So we've been talking about figuring out your passion as a starting place for someone who's coming out of school, and truthfully for anyone. But now we're at a point where we're starting to interview, and we're dealing with a hiring manager who could be 10, 20, 30 years older than this graduate, or gasp, 40 years older than this grad. So my thought was, let's get inside the head of a hiring manager and figure out how to become more memorable to them.
I love it. Great.
Where should the new graduate start in terms of connecting with a hiring manager?
Okay, well, that's a great question, Jeff. This is something I think that benefits a lot of people to think about it in terms of, if you have really very little real-world experience, it's a little bit difficult. You think, wow, where do I start? And the most important place to start is knowing you need to be authentic. Be authentic about where your values lie and what really interests you. But look back and see, we talked about being in your flow. where have you ever been involved in a situation working for someone where perhaps you actually improved their lot? You made a difference. And it really could be as small as someone working at a car wash who saved the owner money by finding a less expensive and better cleaning fluid on his free time. I actually had a client who did something similar to that. Someone I know who was selling bridal gowns during the summer. She didn't sell just the dresses. The more we talked about it, she loved it so much because she got involved in the whole experience for the bride, and she actually would recommend accessories and different sites for the bride to go to. What her goal was to help create positive memories surrounding the person's wedding, and helping the bride feel better about herself. So, what I'm beginning to try to talk about here is building experiences that you can focus in on, where you made a difference, where you added value. And it really doesn't have to be that you work for a prestigious brand name firm. That's where I think a lot of people are mistaken. It's showcasing character traits that matter to hiring managers. So across the board, we know, and Warren Buffett says this, that the three things that he looks for when he's hiring, I think he's a pretty good source. You can check out who Warren Buffett is if you don't know of him on your own time. But he says he hires for these three things: integrity, energy, and intelligence. And I think those are the three big ones. There's plenty more: being a rapid learner, a problem solver, curious learner. Having integrity really means following through with what you say you're going to do. And you want to come up with examples, or a story, as we sometimes say, in developing a narrative that shows you have these traits and show how you helped an employer or someone where you might have volunteered.
Yeah, I have some
episodes. Is that answering your question, or did you want?
It's a good start, and I just want to say that I have some previous episodes that talk about stories, but I think they may be for an older audience. So I want to make sure that we cover examples of stories that deal with this aged audience. So what kind of a story might a job hunter? What kind of story might they be able to tell that will demonstrate those special qualities that will help them stand out in a hiring manager's mind?
Okay, well, that's why I mentioned, I'll give you another example. Those two experiences are really someone who hasn't had a lot of prior work experience in the corporate world, being a salesperson or someone who's worked at a car wash. I could give you another one, a cashier. A lot of kids do that in their summer, and one, client of mine, when I dug a little bit deeper with her, we discovered she was left alone with the cash when the manager had some health issues with a child at home, and she needed to deliver the cash to the bank, and he would leave early to pick up his children, and she essentially helped to lighten his load. So those are qualities. How did you help to lighten the load of your previous employer? Were you trusted? Obviously, she was trusted if she was left alone with the cash and taking the cash to the bank for him. So these are qualities: trust, integrity, that you want to have a story behind, at least to know the character traits matter. So when you get your next job, you start looking for experiences that you can develop your repertoire of accomplishments that demonstrate good character: integrity, energy, intelligence, problem solving. These are being a curious learner, someone who's collaborative. These are the character traits that you want to find stories. And to know specifically about a certain hiring manager, well, it's not always possible to know everything, but you can get a glimpse. Again, I'm going back to LinkedIn. Sorry, Jeff, but it's just a fantastic place to explore. How long you can, get a little bit of an understanding is try to find someone who's actually worked for the company on LinkedIn, who you might know. Maybe they went to your, maybe alma mater, and maybe you could connect with them because you're in a common group. So you have something to say when you connect with them. We're in this group now, and if I could have 10 minutes of your time, I have a few questions. And this kind of informational interview can get you some insight into learning more about what the communication style is there, what's the What are what's an ideal candidate? What does it take to become an ideal candidate? What's the personality structure of people who thrive there? And what gaps are they trying to fill? Again, you want to come to the table, hopefully, knowing so much about that firm and about that hiring manager's needs that you might even have some ideas to help them solve the problems that they're facing before you even come to the table. That shows emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is probably one of the most important things that a new hire can bring to the table. It's not just experience. They don't expect you to be 30 when you're 20. They know that you've just come out of college, but what they want to see is that you're someone who is trustworthy and that is excited and passionate about their business. How much do you know about it and what they do? Well, what their mission is, well, tell them, are you really sincerely interested in them? So, do your research, and if you already know that this is an area that interests you, you don't want to tell them anything that you could Google. You want to go in with questions that are something that you couldn't have found out on your own time. That shows consideration and I think an appreciation for what they're really trying to tackle. What are their core challenges? Try to get to find those.
And then folks, I just want to jump in for a second and say, Beth has talked about LinkedIn, and I think it's a great tool. I was doing a caricature before. But two things I want to make sure don't get missed. Number one is Beth spoke about groups. Join the largest groups that you can in the area of interest that you have, because LinkedIn will let you see more profiles as a result of that. The way LinkedIn is right now, you used to be able to see first, second, third level connections as well as group memberships. Right now it's first and second plus groups. And the issue is most of you folks don't have big networks yet on LinkedIn. So joining larger groups will give you access to more people that you can message directly. The second one is a little tool that I developed that will show you every LinkedIn profile in the United States. The web address for it is li, like LinkedIn, -usa.info. And like I said, it searches every LinkedIn profile in the U.S., whether you're connected to them or not. So you can see the basics of their background and thus be able to reach out to them. So I love LinkedIn. As a search professional, as someone who coaches people, I'm able to provide introductions to people, for people, and I'm able to see a lot of great information that helps me fill positions. That's what you're really doing right now, is you're functioning as a recruiter with a practice of trying to place one person, namely yourself, in your next job. And using LinkedIn, you will collect tons of great information about people that you can network with. Oh, third thing about LinkedIn, you mentioned that is the alumni of your school. There's a drop down on the top where you'll see, after you do the drop down, alumni. So you can find people who went to your school who might be a couple of years ahead of you that you can reach out to and do informational interviews with. So sorry I had to support LinkedIn and your advocacy there, so thank you. Now,
I love it.
Thank you. We've been covering a lot of stuff so far. Now, I believe you've been talking about what millennials should focus on in their interviews, but we haven't really gotten to talking about, they're going to get a job, and we know they're going to find work. May not be as fast as they'd like, but they're going to find work. Once they're on board, once they've joined the next organization, what should they be focusing on while they're working there?
Well, that's a great point, Jeff, because it's the follow-through that really matters. I mean, everything that you prepare for and you put in your resume, in your cover letters, once you have discovered what your flow is, where your fit is, it's really just a part of the puzzle, because next is you really do have to develop. I know you've spoken about narratives before on your show, but it is really important, I think, throughout our life to keep reexamining what it is that we can contribute, and in a very succinct way. And sometimes that, you can get help. Most people do require help in developing a narrative that's really compelling. But, to be specific in terms of what to do once you get there, your job description is really just the baseline. You want to look to see where there are opportunities to be challenged and to learn and grow, so you deepen the breadth of your and depth of your experience. Because no matter where you are, it's all about learning, growing, and leveraging. Learn, grow, leverage. We don't know where we'll end up, and I prefer not to focus on that because I think, again, that just provokes anxiety. Some of the most successful people in the industry today didn't know where they'd end up. They were flexible, and they developed skills and expertise in an area that, that was an interest to them. But even if it weren't their dream job, they then later leveraged it because they developed skills that could be transferred elsewhere. So, I've written about transferable skills. You can contact me, but I think it's really important to consider how much you can learn. No matter what job you are, try to help make a contribution. Try to lighten the load of your hiring manager, and be attuned that what matters to them is really important. You've already chosen that field or that particular job. So once you get in there, you be the one that's creatively looking to find solutions to problems, and you'll get a name for it. And it will help you in terms of not only getting noticed, but getting promoted, salaries, increases, and then you can leverage it to go somewhere else, and you use it as a springboard.
Two things I always tell people. Number one is your job is to make your manager look good. And as such, everything that you can do to solve a problem that they have, you try and do it as long as you clear it with them, because you don't want to get into trouble for doing something outside the scope of your responsibilities that is going to tick them off. But again, you try and make your boss look good. And the second thing is you start your next job search. I know it's funny to talk about this, but you start thinking ahead for the next job search on the first day of your new job by starting to think of, okay, what's the next leg up on the ladder for me? What do I need to know and learn between now and the time that I go for the next type of role, whether that's internal to this company or external? What's the next promotional opportunity that I should strive for, and what do I need to know and do in order to get there? And by putting that firmly in your mind, you're starting to plant the seeds for what you want to strive for and aspire to as part of your next role.
I think that's a great point, Jeff. If I may just piggyback on that.
Of course.
One thing I find, though, as much as that's great, and in theory it sounds really good, but what I found with my clients, many of them are challenged by not knowing what the next thing is that they want to do or how to even get there. So, again, it goes back to looking at people who you esteem, who you admire what they're doing, and seeing how they got there, and talk to people in those roles. See where the gaps are that, in terms of your skills, education. Don't be afraid to go and go after those skills. No one starts having all the skills necessary, but sometimes it can provoke anxiety saying, okay, aspire, long-term goals. What are your long-term goals? Well, it helps to have a mentor, and it helps to look to people who you say, hey, that's something I think I could do. They're a few years ahead of me, and how did they get there? Take them out for coffee. Reach out to them, and really, you don't have to look to someone. If you went to a community college, or if you went to a big school, state school, or Ivy, it's always smart to look to your alumni, because those are the people that you can identify with, and oftentimes alumni like to help fellow alumni or alumni.
Alumni, I believe is how it's pronounced.
I think.
Hey, whatever it is, I'm sure they understand what we mean. And basically, folks, what Beth is talking about is networking. Building a network of relationships where you each help one another. You're able to ask questions. You're able to learn. If they need some help, they can come to you and ask you for advice. And there's nothing monetary in this. It's just one of those relationships that you start developing early in your career and build on it and grow with it. Because, again, no employer, as you well know, really cares about you. You're just another cog in the machine, and you have to be the one who's looking out for you. Despite what the employer says, at the end of the day comes the next recession, you could be very disposable. So you always want to be looking out for yourself here and making sure that you have relationships with others who can give you advice and counsel. One more thing I wanted to ask you. What would you say the most important trait is? Most important character trait a person needs to develop professionally?
I love that question. The more people recognize that it's your kids that are going to set you apart from everyone else, the more effective and successful you'll be in your job search, and once you get there in terms of excelling at your work. So skills can be taught. I mean, of course, every job requires certain proficiency, but character is really hard to train for. So knowing that up front, like you're mentioning, a great point, Jeff. So what I would say, I mean, we mentioned character traits before in terms of integrity, intelligence, creativity, in terms of following through and being trustworthy and accountable. But what I would say is my top character trait is what I refer to as strategic empathy. What I mean by that is really investing yourself in caring about your employer. After all, you've made the choice to work for them. Hopefully you've done your homework, you've checked out their mission, their vision, their values. You might have spoken with professors who, when you were in school, who you admired, who worked in that industry. You might have already had, talking about the networking, made a good impression upon them and hopefully gotten a recommendation from them, which always helps. But when it goes back to making a great impression, I think empathy really covers a lot, because that means you'll do your research about the firm because you care. It's not about touchy-feely, telling a person you like them and they're being super nice. When I mean strategic empathy as it relates to the workplace, is caring about what matters to your prospective employer, and then making it your business to help follow through with making a real contribution there by trying to identify the gaps. What are their acute pain points, as we call them? What are their challenges? Ask, look, talk to people, read, and see, look for opportunities where you can make a difference. That's being strategically empathetic. And as you do that, the more you do that, the more you're going to get noticed. And ultimately, you don't have to be talking about yourself as a strategic empath. It's more doing it. And I use this. I just recently wrote an article in Forbes that was "What Matters to You Matters to Me." And I was quoting a comedian and a marriage counselor who spoke about this. And he really explains that beautiful concept. It's pretty profound. It sounds really simple. In any great relationship, you have to really care about what matters to the other person. So, of course, you have to have self-esteem. You have to care about your own needs. I'm not at all negating the importance of you. After all, you have to first look out for yourself. Well, who else will look out for you? But you do want to know what it is and where it is that you can make a difference. And that will become your passion, too, hopefully, but it will be where you'll get noticed. So try to think in terms of being more empathetic and interested and learning about what the needs are of your prospective hiring manager, and it will make a difference.
Well said. Well put. Beth, thank you so much for making time today. How can people find out more about you and the work that you do?
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Jeff. It was really a lot of fun. You can find me at Beth Kuhel, BethKuhel, at Beth Kuhel on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be delighted to connect with any of you. I coach all over the country. I coach people, in the United States. That's really my focus. And, it's just a real privilege working with this population, because this is the one that you're the folks that are just getting started, are going to make a real difference. There are great opportunities out there. Don't get down. No, there are channels, there are strategies that can help you be more effective, and you really should start getting excited about looking for ways where you can make a difference. And I love this population. Millennials, go millennials, go. So yes, reach out to me on my website, or I think, Jeff, you have the link to my website. on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you can find me. I'm excited to be able to help you. And thanks again for having me on the show today.
My pleasure. And folks, we'll be back next time with someone else designed to help you with your job search. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I just want to remind you about my new site, JobSearchCoachingHQ.com, a site where I function as your ally through the job search. So rather than listening to what a recruiter tells you, who's basically being paid by an employer to deliver you to their job for which they are going to be paid, or certainly rather than listening to an employer who you know is trying to manipulate the situation to their advantage, I'm there to work for you to help you find work. The site has tons of content available on it. It has forums and discussion areas so people can ask one another for advice, as well as the opportunity to schedule time with me so I can answer your questions. So, again, JobSearchCoachingHQ.com. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.
If you would like to have Jeff give you advice about your job search, you'll love JobSearchCoachingHQ.com. This site has all of Jeff's books and guides to job hunting available free. The ability to have Jeff answer your questions, plus podcasts and videos that'll help you with all the different parts of a job search, including writing a winning resume and cover letter, great answers to interview questions, how to negotiate effectively, whether you want an easy way or want to get tough, plus a community of people like you who you can get advice from. The